This show has been brought to you by Smith's Detection and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
My voice is the voice that guides you home safely each and every day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I am the voice of the safest and most efficient airspace in the world.
I have to be 100% of the time.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a professional air traffic controller.
With Congress working to wrap up an omnibus appropriation bill for the year, we had the opportunity this week to go one-on-one with Montana Senator Jon Tester, a key leader in the effort to maintain funding for the TSA LEO reimbursement program. Senator Tester, who's the ranking member on the Homeland Security Subcommittee from the Appropriations Committee, talked to us about that issue, his priorities, along with his prognosis for an infrastructure package and FAA reauthorization for the year ahead. Let's take a look. We're privileged today to be in the office of Senator Jon Tester, Democrat from Montana, to talk about aviation issues. Senator Tester, importantly for us, is on the Senate Commerce Committee and the ranking member on the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee in the Senate. So, Senator, thank you for taking a couple of minutes of time to be with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
And I want to start on that role as ranking member on the Homeland Security Committee, Appropriations, with a public thank you for your work leading the charge to get funding for the TSA LEO reimbursement program. We're not quite across the finish line for fiscal year 2018 as we tape this, but you certainly have been a leader on that issue. So I want to say thank you. Why was that issue so important to you and to Montanans?
Well, look, safety in our airports is critically important. And I can tell you that program helps airports hire police officers. And I think that if you look at the overall scheme of things, the TSA does a great job making sure that bad people don't get on airplanes. But there's more to it than just that when it comes to safety. And the reimbursement program, the LEO reimbursement program that the president zeroed out, I just thought was too important. I mean, I fly a lot and get to see firsthand the kind of challenges that are out there that airport executives and other folks in the airline industry have to deal with. And I just think those police officers are money well spent. It gives a sense of security out there that I think is really important. And it's not just a sense, it's real security. These folks are there, they treat people well, but they do their job, and their job is to keep their community safe when they're in the airport. And I thought it was irresponsible to zero that program out. So we got it reinstated, and I think we're going to be successful in the omnibus. Unfortunately, in 2019, the president's budget zeroes it out again, so we're going to fight that back. And I think the points are on our side, that you know, if we're going to deal with a very dangerous world, that LEO and reimbursement program is very, very important.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, we may get across the finish line with 18, but we've got the same proposal on the table again. You've been aggressive on that. So any advice for airports and for us who were trying to get that across the finish line?
Well, I mean, I think that, and this goes not only to this issue, but probably any other issue we're going to talk about in this interview and issues we deal with, but contact your elected representatives, both in the House and the Senate. If you have an avenue to get a hold of Senator McConnell because he controls floor action, that's always a good email to write. And those are the two places I would absolutely focus on. In the end, you know, the president's budget is the first touch, and then we deal with it in Congress. And I think that the input that we can get from your members is critically important. If these are important programs, whether it's the LEO program or any of the other grants that are out there that airports use, big, small, or otherwise, make sure you let us know as your elected representatives how important those dollars are and how they're being utilized. And then it's our job to prioritize. And air travel is so important in this day and age. It's a pretty high priority item for me, especially living in a state like Montana.
Well, we appreciate it. I sat through many hearings with administration officials walking through the budget, and you were consistent on that program. Yeah. On the Homeland Security Committee, before that, you transferred to the Commerce Committee about midway through the year. So in all your roles, you've been consistent on that, and we just really want to thank you for that.
No, it's a good program.
And so let's talk a little bit more beyond the LEO reimbursement program. What have your other priorities been on the subcommittee as you look to spread the dollars for Homeland Security on the transportation and aviation security side? What has been your focus, and where would you like to see dollars moving forward?
Well, I mean, I think moving forward, we've got to have the best of technology in our airports. And I've had this conversation with the head of TSA for a number of years. Criminals go to the weakest link in the chain. There's no doubt about that. And so when it comes to technology, every airport should be equal because I think they're all at equal risk. So making sure technology is the best, making sure that we have research dollars to continue to research the next potential threat that's out there and how we're going to defend against it is critically important. And then adequate manpower. You know, I deal with airports. I fly 4 legs a week. It's just the nature of the business of being a U.S. Senator from Montana. And I see the folks out there, whether it's the folks that work in the airline industry or the folks that work for the airport authority or it's the folks that work with TSA, they're under pressure conditions all the time. And if you're short-staffed, it makes that problem even greater. And I know it, not unlike the LEO program, there are other programs out there where if they can help you with your staffing, it makes life a lot easier. So, you know, if some of that reimbursement can come from the federal level and we can hear about it, we'll work on that. And then, of course, infrastructure overall is very much a priority, making sure that we have runways and aprons and tarmacs and all the stuff that's out there, the structures that we unload the passengers, all that stuff. Really important to make the experience good. Because traveling by air is something that is pretty commonplace these days. I mean, the Wright brothers would be very happy if they've seen it today. I was in the Salt Lake City airport yesterday morning, and I walked in, and you know, if you've ever been in there, you kind of rise, you're standing up high, and then you go down. And I looked out, and it was a sea of people in the B concourse. And I'll just tell you that there are a lot of people that utilize our airlines, that utilize our airports. Making sure that experience is a positive experience is critically important if we're going to move our economy forward. So whether it's technology, manpower, or infrastructure, all 3 of those are very high on my list.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The FAA just had a forecast released this past week that showed growth over the next 20 years is going to go to 1.5 billion U.S. travelers a year. So we're going to take 400 million passengers beyond what we have right now and add them to the system. So you touched on the importance of infrastructure investment, and that's certainly a high priority for airports. We have the president who's been talking for a year, 2 years now, about a major infrastructure package. What's your reaction to what you've seen so far, the principles that the administration has laid out for getting that trillion or $1.5 trillion of infrastructure investment that we've talked about for quite a while now?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying there is no doubt we need to have a serious investment in infrastructure in this country, whether it's roads and bridges, broadband, sewer and water, or airports. It's really important that we have that. We've been living off my parents and the generation before that infrastructure now for far too long, and it's wore out. What is the president putting forth a plan to invest $1.5 trillion in infrastructure? I don't think is unreasonable. I think we could easily spend $1.5 trillion getting our infrastructure up to snuff. The problem is that with the federal government providing 20% of those dollars and 80% coming from cities and towns, airports, county government, state government, it's just not going to work. I'm telling you, I can tell you, Montana, for example, I don't think there's a state in the union that's different. Doesn't have a lot of cash laying around. And I can tell you that the folks that are running the airports out there don't have a lot of cash laying around. So where do you get the 80%? I asked that at a Commerce Committee hearing last week, and they said, well, you'll have to sell the assets. Well, that sounds good, but it's impractical. In a state like Montana, does that mean sell roads and bridges? I mean, toll roads won't work in Montana. We don't have the population. The toll booth operator would be more lonely than the Maytag repairman. I mean, truthfully. And then, so do we sell our public lands? Well, public lands in the state of Montana is arguably the biggest business in the state of Montana. $9 billion a year in Montana alone economic development. I should say $7 billion in economic development, 74,000 jobs. So I think it's impractical. The truth is where the rubber hits the road is with the dollars. We've got to figure out a way to fund it. It's not going to be easy, but we need to work in a bipartisan way to make sure that not only airports have the infrastructure they need to satisfy the 21st century demand, but also other areas, roads, bridges, broadband, and the like.
So you've narrowed in on that key issue of the funding and how's that money going to materialize. Clearly a difference of opinion from where the administration has started, where I think Democrats in Congress would like to see more federal dollars obviously on the table, no matter with various ways of how those would materialize. So do you see in an election year with all of the difficult issues that you have already have to face here, we're dealing with the omnibus now, and then you theoretically are going to turn to an infrastructure bill. How optimistic are you that Congress can actually accomplish something this year?
It's always difficult to predict what Congress is going to do, but the bottom line is I'm always very optimistic. I think that where there's a will, there's a way. And I think if we can get people together in the same room and we can sit down and put aside our party affiliations and work for the common good of the people, we can come up with an infrastructure bill that will work. And I think it's very important. I think we've put it off for too long already. But the thing we all have to understand, this stuff doesn't get built for nothing. It takes money to build this stuff. Like it or not, it does. And I always give the example, I live 12 miles outside of a little town called Big Sandy. There's a highway that was paved in 1973 outside my house. That highway has saved me so many dollars in repairs to my trucks, my cars last longer, the list goes on and on. So you make the investment today, whether it's that infrastructure or whether it's infrastructure in runways and aprons, it's going to pay back for years and years and years to come, over and over and over again. You just have to make that initial investment, and you got to find the money to do that.
And that's probably the debate we're going to see play out here over the next couple of months. Want to shift gears with you to one final topic before we let you get back to your work here in the Senate. FAA Reauthorization, you've now made the move to the Commerce Committee, and so we're nearing the end of an extension on FAA programs at the end of March, likely to be a further extension into the summer, it looks like. What do you see happening on FAA reauthorization, and what are your priorities?
Well, it really is on Congress's back. And the truth is I think it'll be extended out to the end of the fiscal year. And then we've got extended into 19. One of the things that government needs to do that we haven't done very well in Congress is give predictability. That FAA bill is the definition of predictability for our airline industry. And so we need to not only get it extended out the end of September, but also make sure it's around for fiscal year 19 too, so that people can do the planning that they need to do and predictability. And by the way, it will help drive our economy. It will help continue to encourage folks to utilize the mode of travel that they want to utilize, in this case, air. Look, my priorities in that bill is just make sure that the small airports, I come from a rural state, all my airports are small. I've been at all of them, and we've visited with the airport managers there and talked about what their needs are, making sure they have access to dollars to be able to do the upgrading and the updating they need to do moving forward is my priority in whatever area it may be, whether it's the small grants that are given out to small airports for developments of runways. That's really important. I was down in Bozeman. Bozeman just is the busiest airport in the state of Montana. They just applied for and got one of those grants, and it's really helped them, serve the public in a way that they need to serve that community. So it's really, bottom line for me is I'm going to listen to the folks who are in the business, and we'll confirm the information they tell us as being true, and then we'll move forward and try to do the best for the industry. Why? Because, and I think you could say this if you were from California or New York or Florida, but in Montana, air travel is really important to our economy, and we need to do what we can do to make it the best it can be and as affordable as it can possibly be. And that's what we work on every day.
And the good news is with the Commerce Committee, a very rural state heavy committee with Senator Thune from South Dakota and a number of Kansas, Mississippi, you name it, a lot of rural areas. Do you feel pretty good about that makeup and the focus on those issues that you just described with, say, small community air service being a priority?
I do. Look, I just got on the committee in January, and it's a committee that I really like. They deal with issues that I deal with every day in my personal life. And so it's a fun committee, and it's a real committee, and the folks we have on it on both sides of the aisle are really good people, and I think it's a committee that we can get some good things done moving forward, and I anticipate we'll do exactly that.
Well, Senator, we started with security and want to thank you again for your work there. We're thrilled to have you on the Commerce Committee and look forward to getting that FAA bill across the line and infrastructure. You've been a great leader for the state and we appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for your time. Pleasure visiting with you.